Welcome back to Peer-Guided DBT Lessons, provided by DBT Skills Application, Peers Helping Peers. This lesson, marked C-4 between the modules Christmas Mood Survival, we will be looking at the acronym MOOD. We ask that you please keep in mind that we're simply peers helping peers, working together to bring about more constructive, peaceful, and ultimately happier lives. In other words, a life worth living. Many of us look towards the holidays with a sense of dread. If ever there was a perfect season for testing DBT skills out, the holidays would be it. Those feelings of dread can actually be put to good use. If we see those emotions as an early warning signal, we're given time to cope ahead. That warning signal can help us to be more prepared for what we expect or fear is to come. Whether it's managing expectations, acting comfortably in social settings, or navigating the waters of family dynamics, the holiday season is replete with challenges that call for maintaining a balanced mind. This lesson will focus on the acronym MOOD. Our next acronym is MOOD and is used for coping with obligations. M for mindfully weigh the options, O for opposite action, O for one thing at a time, and D for decisively. M for mindfully weigh the options. If there is somewhere you feel obligated to go, or something you would prefer not to do, decide if it is absolutely necessary that you do. Over the years, Christmas has come to mean to many of us that day which stands apart. December 25th has become guilt and obligation, according to Phil Donahue. We have come to act as though of all days we have to do what others feel they need, even if we have to sacrifice our own needs and wishes to do so. This is the message we receive from society. It is reinforced so often that most of us have accepted it as fact, as though if it is repeated often enough, it must be true. Just scroll through quotes on Christmas. Christmas is a tonic for our souls. It moves us to think of others rather than of ourselves. It directs our thoughts to giving. B.C. Forbes. Christmas and the holidays are the season of giving. It's a time when people are more kind and open-hearted. Giselle Bundchen. When you give up yourself, that's when you will feel the true spirit of Christmas. And that's giving, that's serving others, and that's when you feel fulfilled. Joel Osteen. Christmas is a rare occasion when we are reminded that we have obligations to people we did not choose to be related to, and that love is not just a spontaneous feeling, but something we sometimes really have to work at, with people we may not even much like. Julian Beghini. So why do we feel compelled? Obligation defined. Obligation is a social, legal, or moral requirement, such as a duty, contract, or promise that compels one to follow or avoid a particular course of action. If it is not a duty, contract, or promise, it is not an obligation. When looking at obligation, requirement, and expectation, judgment, the quote on the left is saturated in judgmental thoughts. How does the Christmas holiday put a requirement on us to change our relationships with people just because they are related to us? Isn't this a judgment rather than obligation? Do you hear words such as or ought, should? What requires us to do anything for or with a person just because we were born into that family? Isn't this a judgment rather than obligation? Do you hear or ought, should? Why are we obligated to love people we don't like just because they are relatives? How many expectations or judgments are you treating like obligations? A worksheet may be helpful to decide if what you are facing is obligation or expectation. An example: mandatory work party is a job-related duty, so it is an obligation. The following worksheet is in our lesson website. The link is in the video description below. Next is O for opposite action. If it is unavoidable and you don't want to, opposite action is required. Often using an action opposite to what we feel will trigger you to feel differently about what you are doing. When looking at opposite action, we start out having an emotion or an urge, but we act opposite to what we want to do in response to it, changing actions to change emotions. Opposite action is choosing behaviors that are incompatible with the emotion you are feeling, so you interrupt the emotion that is currently firing and refiring. An example to this might be if you're afraid of what might be on the other side of the door and avoid the door because of that fear, you only continue to feed your fear. If you face the fear and open the door to find nothing is there, you have dismantled the reason for that fear. Next is O for one thing at a time. While following an obligation through, focus on only what you need to do to get through the single moment, this single event. The more mindful in the moment you are able to remain, the more likely you will be able to get through it without making it worse. Here we have a mindfulness of the five senses exercise. This exercise is called Five Senses and provides guidelines on practicing mindfulness quickly in nearly any situation. All that is needed is to notice something you are experiencing with each of the five senses. First, notice 5 things that you can see. Look around you and bring your attention to 5 things that you can see. Pick something that you don't normally notice, like a shadow or a small crack in the concrete. Next, notice 4 things that you can feel. Bring awareness to 4 things that you are currently feeling, like the texture of your pants, the feeling of the breeze on your skin, or the smooth surface of a table you're resting your hands on. Next, notice 3 things you can hear. Take a moment to listen and note 3 things that you hear in the background. This can be the chirp of a bird, the hum of the refrigerator, or the faint sounds of traffic from a nearby road. Next, notice 2 things you can smell. Bring your awareness to smells that you usually filter out, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. Perhaps the breeze is carrying a whiff of pine trees if you're outside, or the smell of a fast food restaurant across the street. Next, notice 1 thing you can taste. Focus on 1 thing that you can taste right now, in this moment. You can take a sip of a drink, chew a piece of gum, eat something, or just notice the current taste in your mouth, or open your mouth to search the air for a taste. The five senses exercise could help you bring awareness to the current moment in a short amount of time. And finally, D, for decisively. Have a plan before beginning. Decide in advance how much you are willing to tolerate in order to fill the obligation, and stick to it. Nobody should subject themselves to being treated like a doormat. If possible, decide how much time you are willing to allot to this. Having a limit may help you get through by knowing it will pass and when it will. The lesson, handouts, and worksheets accompanying this video can be found at the following link. Because this time of year can cause added emotional pain and stressors, we're offering additional support in our group. Please join us in our Facebook support group, DBT Skills Application.